and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA, where all the news is legitimate. I'm Andy Hum.
I wouldn't go that far. I'm Ann Northrup.
And yes, in the news this week, as you've been, if you haven't been under a rock, the Romney-Ryan extreme position on abortion has been exposed, and the Republican Party platform is digging in against the rights of women and LGBT people.
Can't wait to talk about that. But on the good side, the U.S. Congress will have a new out gay member next year, and the Florida State Legislature will have its first out gay member and maybe a second or third.
Jacksonville, Florida City Council rejected an LGBT rights ordinance when a sponsor went against it, but Jackson City, Michigan approved one.
Yeah. We thought the headline this week was going to be the shooting at the Family Research Council by the presumably disturbed, we'll go into that, gay man in Washington, D.C. But of course, Mr. Aiken and Mr. Ryan have superseded that. But what's interesting is that right after the gay man shot up the Family Research Council, some thugs went after a gay bar in Utah. We didn't hear a lot of discussion of that.
With flaming projectiles.
Yeah.
In Chicago's West Side, a transgender youth was found murdered.
And we have a verdict in the Janet Jenkins, Lisa Miller case. A Christian activist, also named Miller, was convicted of aiding the kidnapping of lesbian Janet Jackson's daughter by her ex-partner. And in addition to that decision, Janet has now brought a RICO suit against the right-wing Liberty University and Jerry Falwell's Thomas Road Baptist Church for aiding in the kidnapping.
A former assistant attorney general in Michigan was ordered to pay $4.5 million for defaming the gay student body president at the University of Michigan.
And not just defaming him, but stalking him all over the place,
Yes.
Really harassing him. In Canada, the largest Protestant denomination there has elected an out gay leader.
Pussy Riot was sentenced to...
Can you say that on cable?
Here's the thing. We'll get the New York Times won't say the word cock for the play called Cock. They
Yes.
call it the Cockfight play, and they won't use the word. But they are saying Pussy Riot in their stories. And you've all heard about Pussy Riot. But
Well, maybe they think it's about cats.
these brave women got 2 years in prison for criticizing Putin in a demonstration that did take place in an Orthodox church. The church forgave them.
Did they?
Yeah, they immediately forgave them
Yeah,
the next day.
Well, there are nuances to
But
that story,
Putin
too.
did not.
Popular songwriter and singer Rufus Wainwright married his boyfriend of 5 years, but he thinks gay marriage is somehow different, but he's not sure how yet.
And I saw a whole mess of one-act plays over at Primary Stages, including gay-themed plays by Paul Rudnick and Neil LaBute.
But the headline this week, obviously, is Representative Todd Akin of Missouri, now the Republican Senate candidate. As we tape, we are, of course, a few hours short of his initial deadline to withdraw from the race. He says, as we're taping, he's not withdrawing, but...
Because God has called him to this race.
Sometimes they withdraw at the last minute, and by the time people see this, he may be out of the race. We'll see.
Well...
But meanwhile, this is a whole fight over reproductive freedom, people's personal rights to their bodies. He's
an extremely anti-gay guy as well. Extremely.
Exactly,
Very
exactly.
outspoken on gay stuff. He, you know.
But one thing I want to talk about is that he's gotten himself into this thing about women lying about being raped. The whole reason that these right-wingers are against including this incest and rape exception to forbidding getting abortion is that they say women will lie about having been raped.
So they've been raped and they give me my abortion.
Right.
And they also, but he was a believer in this idea that if it was, and when he said legitimate rape, I give him credit. What he really meant was, if you were really raped, you wouldn't be pregnant because you don't get pregnant when you're raped. And this was his view. And therefore, we don't need a rape exception because people who are really raped don't get pregnant. Rachel Maddow did a terrific job of laying all this out on her show.
Well, I like the scientific explanation from Nancy Schneiderman on the Today Show that about 5% of rapes result in pregnancy and about 5% of consensual heterosexual intercourse results in pregnancy. There is no medical, physical, scientific truth to this idea.
It's quackery.
But it's been said, what I liked about what Rachel did was that she went through the history of people making this claim, that this is not some crazy thing that he made up. This has been the right-wing position for many, many, many years, that this myth that women don't get pregnant when they're raped.
And legislators also want to get rid of the health of the mother exception.
Well,
for
I'm
abortion.
shocked that Paul Ryan claims to support that, because that has been used as the very broad excuse for rape by women who claim mental cruelty kinds of reasons. It's been a very good basis for people to make a broad claim.
Plus, Mitt Romney, immediately the campaign sends out a statement which is a complete lie, that we support exceptions for rape and incest and abortion. Whereas he is, even in this campaign, now forget his past history on this, even in this because he used to be for abortion rights in the past, but even in this campaign, he has said, I would sign he would sign a marriage amendment, but he would also sign an amendment that would ban all abortions in all cases.
And most contraception.
Yes.
Now, you know how I feel about paying any attention to major party platforms.
Yes.
I tend to scoff at the idea that we're going to hold anyone accountable for what's said in platforms, because you may remember that Ronald Reagan promised to outlaw abortion. George Bush promised to outlaw same-sex marriage. These are all empty promises that are made to constituents with no intention of following through.
Well, but they also didn't have majorities in Congress to do it.
Nonetheless, they were not pushing it. They were not out campaigning for it. They were making empty promises, which is most of what these platforms are.
But
nonetheless,
people will pay attention to the platforms this year, because the debates over the platforms are going on right now as the candidates are lying about their positions.
The idea that the Republican platform is going to include, and we'll get to the LGBT stuff in a second, both from Aiken and from the platform.
But we care about reproductive rights here on Gay USA.
Well, it's all about personal bodily integrity, which is applicable to all of us. And these issues are for all of us. And certainly lesbians get pregnant from rape or other ways, and need access to reproductive freedom.
And some trans men do too.
Absolutely. So the idea that the Republican platform contains this personhood amendment, this idea that all abortions are outlawed and all forms of contraception that might interfere with the fertilization of an egg or its development.
Every sperm is sacred.
Oh my God, it's just unbelievable.
The
that
country's
these
gone off a
guys
cliff.
are doing this.
And folks, you're asleep now. Look, we will see how this plays out in Missouri. I mean, the fact that Aiken has been abandoned by his Republican colleagues and even the far-right commentators, means he's not going to have a lot of resources to make his case. He could end up like that woman in Nevada, Sharon
Angle.
What's her name?
Look, I'm hoping this is like the Barry Goldwater election of 1964, and these guys go crashing down
Brings
because
them
they
all
are
down.
extremists. Yes, But I also am very cynical about this guy won a primary. He obviously has a lot of support. The Family Research Council, which we will also get to, immediately came out in support of everything he said.
He was the candidate in the first place that Claire McCaskill wanted to run against.
Yes,
he was the most extreme candidate,
and
he was leading 11 points in the polls.
Yeah,
because Karl Rove and all those characters have been pouring jillions of dollars into that state to defame her.
Well,
now they're not going to be spending that money.
Well, he thinks they will ultimes.
Oh,
that
really?
If he
that they're
stays
come back
in the race, they're going to come back to him because winning the Senate is more important to them.
They know they know they have to isolate him if they're going to prevail elsewhere.
Well, the hypocrisy of isolating him is how many of them agree with him.
Everybody agrees with him in the Republican Party, basically.
Yes.
Come on.
Well, here's the rest of his record. He has consistently gotten a 0 rating from the Human Rights Campaign. He proposed in Congress. Now, Ryan got 10% one year because he voted for Enda. Aiken has never gotten above 0. He proposed a military conscience clause to support the freedom of speech of those in the military who object to lesbian and gay people serving openly. There is no free speech in the military, folks.
Right.
So this would be unprecedented. He wanted to bar any military facility being used for same-sex marriages.
He took to the floor in 2006 to condemn same-sex marriage and suggested the countries that have allowed it have vanished as a result of that decision.
Where is Spain? Where is Spain?
Well, Spain's in a lot of trouble. But Greece doesn't have it, and they're disappearing too.
He's in favor of the Federal Marriage Amendment. He's opposed to the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. He was opposed to repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He's opposed to all hate crimes legislation. He's right down the line saying that, the fact that we are going to destroy civilization if we endorse same-sex marriage goes a step farther than some.
Well, at least the Log Cabin Club acknowledges that there's no such thing as legitimate rape, they said.
Yeah, but they have not decided yet whether to endorse Mitt Romney. And when Democrats sent them a letter saying, please, are you really going to stand up for these guys? They sent back a very angry note saying, how dare you try to tell us what to do? We pay no attention to you. You're not going to have any effect on us, and we'll make our own decisions.
Right.
The draft platform for the Republican National Committee does which the log cabins were touting earlier in the week as having this broad statement about dignity and respect for all, supports a federal marriage amendment, wants to get rid of those same-sex marriages already performed, wants the administration to defend the Defense of Marriage Act, complains about activist judges being a bigger threat than presidential malfeasance, which they have also said is happening. Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council proudly told us that he wrote these platform blanks for the Republicans.
This is not the guy, the actor, the closet case who died of AIDS. This is the guy who runs the Family Research Council. He wrote it. Well, just like lobbyists write all their bills on finance and everything.
Well, yes, but they're quite naked about it. So things are really going crazy there in the Republican Party. I hope that this somehow hurts Tommy Thompson in Wisconsin.
Well, Tommy Thompson is the Republican candidate for Senate against Tammy Baldwin, the out lesbian in Wisconsin.
He won the primary last week.
But he is considered the strongest candidate. He's won several statewide races there. He's also the former head of the HHS.
Yes, and the former governor. So
Reagan?
Tammy's got a tough fight in Wisconsin, but I'd like to think all this will help her. But take a look at helping Tammy if you can. But meanwhile, there was a primary for her seat, which she has given up in the House of Representatives to run for Senate, for Herb Kohl's Senate seat. And the primary for that seat was won by out-gay state representative Mark Pocan.
Got a picture of him.
Yes.
That we can show you.
Who won the primary in Madison, Wisconsin. He has been a very effective state legislator. He helped pass a domestic partner registry, even though marriage is specifically outlawed for same-sex couples in Wisconsin.
Does he not even have Republican opposition?
Correct.
Yeah.
He is elected in all but name at the moment. He also married his partner in Toronto a few years ago because marriage is not legal in Wisconsin, but he went ahead to Toronto to marry his partner.
Now, in Michigan, Trevor Thomas, who was making a congressional bid out there, lost his primary for the Democratic nomination in the 3rd District.
But a lot of news from Florida, where John Alvarez won a Democratic House primary and will face a Republican incumbent in Melbourne, Florida. That's going to be a tough fight. But David Richardson won the Democratic primary for a state house seat in Miami Beach.
And he will be the first out legislature in the Florida legislature because he has no GOP Republican opponent.
Right.
And there's another guy who was...
Joe Saunders won a primary in Orange County for the state house. So we will see what happens with Joe and John. Tough races, but David is definitely in. And Ian Whitney won a primary in Key West for the state house.
If you want to read about see who won across the country or who's up for election, you could go to victoryfund.org, and you can see all the results.
Yes, they're the ones that support out LGBT candidates. Now, trans woman Gina Duncan lost her race for Orange County Commissioner in Florida, but she did get 40% of the vote, which is a very good showing. And in New Mexico, Jacob Candelaria won a primary for state senate. These are all out gay candidates. And Brian Sims in Pennsylvania won a primary for the state house. So all of those are situations where we will newly have out gay people in the state legislatures.
Now, Paul Ryan confessed his love for Rage Against the Machine, but they are not endorsing him. In fact, they
have some rage against him.
They said they wonder what his favorite Rage song is. This is a statement from them. Is it the one where we condemn the genocide of Native Americans, the one lambasting American imperialism, our cover of F the Police? You already confessed your love for Ayn Rand.
No, he's disavowed her.
Atheist, but he once loved her. Now he loves Thomas Aquinas. But these guys from Rage the Machine also bring up the rage against gays that he has, and women and immigrants and all those kinds of things. They let him have it. They're not shrinking away from this fight.
In the long tradition of musical groups disavowing the Republican political candidates who use their music.
Not that Democrats are perfect. There were 7 protesters arrested in Oakland, California, protesting at Obama headquarters in support of Bradley Manning. Good for them.
Yeah.
That's one place where the president is wrong, and I hate what's happening with Julian Assange over there in Britain.
And there are Democrats in Jacksonville, Florida, who collaborated with Republicans to defeat a Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity and Expression Non-Discrimination Act there. The first vote against a good bill, we lost 17-2. Then they watered it down some, and we only lost 10-9. But one of the leading people against us was the Democratic mayor of Jacksonville, who's an anti-Obama African-American Democrat.
Oh, well. Sad, and we lost a sponsor there. So, so they're going to keep fighting there in Jacksonville. And, anyway. In Jackson City, Michigan, the commission there, actually they didn't adopt the bill yet, but they agreed to take it up, and it sounds like they're going to pass it. This is an inclusive and equal non-discrimination ordinance, which will include transgender. But
in California, the Fair Political Practices Commission has fined the right-wing group ProtectMarriage.com $49,000 for campaign reporting violations around the Prop 8 vote 4 years ago.
I want to give, by the way, Bonnie Upright, the columnist down there in Jacksonville, credit for her column on the loss of the bill, because she's celebrating it as a business owner, because now she's legally protected when she only hires LGBT people who she really likes. And she goes on and on and on.
Oh,
with all these
She
positive...
can't be charged with discrimination for not hiring straight people.
Exactly.
I got it.
It plays on a lot of positive stereotypes about our people, which aren't true. But
And if you sometimes watch the other gay TV station Logo, they're going to do a couple of political specials leading up to the November election, and Wanda Sykes, not us, will be hosting them. Actually, we love Wanda, and she's very politically astute. The first one's going to be on September 10th. Right after the political conventions, and there will be another one sometime just before the election. You might want to watch for that.
And what do we think about the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force getting involved in trying to stop a vote on gaming issues on the ballot in Maryland?
I told you last week I hated that, and they lost because the Maryland legislature went ahead and added the gambling referendum to the ballot. Now, the question, I would think, since that is going to be such a popular thing and people are going to come out to vote for gambling expansion, that would help us in the vote, but they think it's a bad thing because everybody's up the ballot.
Since we've never won one of these, except in Arizona once when they also included domestic partners, and then they voted again, and then they screwed us on marriage. But, who knows?
Who knows, indeed. And meanwhile, the Maryland Secretary of State has published the language for the marriage referendum.
Oh, yes.
And it emphasizes that it's civil marriage for same-sex couples and religions are not forced to perform same-sex marriages. But the last phrase is the one that we wonder about. It says, religious organizations and certain related entities are not required to provide goods, services, or benefits in violation of their religious beliefs. So is this restricted somehow to definably religious organizations, or are business owners who assert religious beliefs not required?
All I have to say is it better not be, but I mean, that would be in the law. We should have gone back and reread the law there to know.
Well, that's the wording of the
No, that's the wording.
referendum.
This is the wording of the referendum.
Yeah.
This is what's going to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not necessarily everything that's in the law.
Oh, no, obviously not. But I don't know whether it's clarified in the law itself. All right, so buried the lead, Family Research Council shooting. That was actually the top story until a couple of days ago. So this guy, Floyd Corkins, 28 years old, who was an occasional volunteer at the Washington, D.C. LGBT Center.
Quiet kind of fella.
Well, that's often the way. Armed himself legally in Virginia, but then crossed the line.
Armed himself with guns and a pack full of Chick-fil-A's.
16 sandwiches.
That'll do it to you.
That'll drive you crazy.
I shouldn't make jokes about this because the guy tried to kill somebody. He
walked into the lobby of the building where the Family Research Council and the Alliance Defense Fund and a couple of other organizations are, and he took a shot at the security guard and hit him in the arm, and the security guard and others wrestled him to the ground, and the guy, while he was going down, said, I didn't mean to hurt you, I came to kill other people.
Oh, gosh.
But they got him, and I'm glad they got him, and I'm glad the guy was only shot in the arm. But then ensued a huge debate, which is ongoing to this moment, about who's provoking violence and who hates who, and blah, blah, blah. All of which, I think, is overlooking the fact that, or exploiting the fact that a disturbed guy gets a gun and walks into a building to shoot people. I don't think that's a rational act. I don't think you can blame it on rhetoric. I think it is a disturbed act.
We have said in the past that the horrible rhetoric coming out of churches is the kind of thing that if a disturbed person gets a hold of that, and I've said it myself, so I'll take responsibility for this, that the horrible things the Catholic Church says, that we're evil, that we prey on children, that we're a threat to children, all those kinds of things make crazy people crazier and do things. And I think our groups have been very responsible in the aftermath of this and prior to this. What the Family Research Council is picking up on is that they were labeled a hate group. They are a hate group. They hate us, but that I don't consider that the rhetoric that's getting out of hand. The rhetoric that's getting out of hand is, the kinds of things they say about us, about in terms of, we prey on children, those kinds of things.
Well, certainly, all you have to do is go to the GLAAD website at glad.org/CAP, which is their Commentator Accountability Project. And what they've been doing is compiling lists of everything that the Family Research Council and Rush Limbaugh and everybody else have been saying about us and saying, homosexuality is all about pedophilia,
right,
and about destroying kids and all of that.
And they want to criminalize homosexual behavior. So, they're off the deep end.
Well, there's no question, and I have no problem with complaining about that. But I think to turn this shooting into a political argument is a mistake.
Well, Tony Perkins is blaming this on
Yes,
the Obama administration.
I understand. And on gay activists.
Yes,
And on,
he should have just shut his mouth and
Yes.
gotten sympathy.
Yes.
He's an idiot and a bad person.
Well, he's too busy
And,
riding the Republican platform.
And I hope that doesn't inspire any of you to go down there with another gun.
Please don't.
We're against violence. We're
Yeah.
nonviolent here.
Yeah. Well, they are blaming back and forth, and certainly we have a right to defend ourselves against that.
And they're also trying to. What they really like to do these days is say we're defending marriage, and that's why they're attacking us. That's not the only thing you're talking about. Is marriage?
Yes, they're claiming they were labeled a hate group because they're against same-sex marriage. No, they were labeled a hate group because specifically the Southern Poverty Law Center says the lies, the destructive, hateful lies.
Right.
That they tell about gay people.
And then, in the same week, you've got a crowded nightclub in Salt Lake City, a gay club, where the people are enjoying an evening. It's behind a fence, and all these flaming projectiles start coming over the fence and landing in a very crowded area. Thank goodness nobody was hurt. And these cowards, who are described as white males in their late teens and early 20s with blonde, shaggy hair, it says, driving a dark red or maroon Pontiac Grand Am, if you have any information, run away. After they do this, they could have killed somebody, poked somebody's eye out, whatever.
Right, and you don't see a big debate about that and that attack, and the clearly attack on gay people in general with that kind of attack. And then we have Donta Tiffany Gooden, 19 years old, transgender woman, stabbed horribly, multiply to death in Chicago.
Right.
Found in an abandoned building, not far from where another transgender woman was murdered.
Paige Clay.
In April.
Yes.
The attacks continue.
So where's the outrage?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
All right, not quite so violent, but also ugly. Greg Bork of Louisville, Kentucky, was in a relationship for 30 years, has a couple of kids, was both a Boy Scout leader and a Girl Scout leader. Well, guess which one fired him? Yes, the Boy Scouts. He is still a Girl Scout leader.
Right. Well, there is some justice. We've told you over the years about the situation out in Michigan where this assistant attorney general named Andrew Shervill, we have a picture of him, he's the one on the right.
Speaking of disturbed individuals.
Exactly. Had been attacking the out gay president of the student body at the University of Michigan.
Chris Armstrong.
Right, and stalking him and writing all kinds of horrible things about him. Now, all Chris said was that he wanted an apology from this guy.
And when he didn't get one, he sued for $25,000. And he said he'd drop the suit if the guy
And
apologized.
the jury awarded $4.5 million in this case. But, you know, it wasn't, again, it wasn't just, you know, I was a little concerned about First Amendment issues and saying things against this guy.
No, he's been doing much worse than just talking against him. He's really been harassing him and stalking him and going after him.
I mean, he accused him of engaging in sex acts on a children's playground inside a church, and that he hosted orgies. Well, you better have some proof of that.
Well, the speculation is that Andrew has a little crush on Chris.
Well, you saw what he looked like.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was obsessed with him. The name of the blog was Chris Armstrong Watch.
Yeah, I mean, really ugly stuff. Now, a couple of other ugly little stories. The ACLU has asked Greenville County, South Carolina cops to stop soliciting consensual sex and then arresting the men who agree. They say that these men are being humiliated and harassed for no lawful reason. Of course, you know, these guys agree to sex, not for money, not in public.
Well,
you know, yes, I'll go home with you, and then they get arrested.
they went after a representative in Minnesota. His name is Kerry Gauthier, and they have a criminal investigation because the guy was apparently having, you know, sex in a car with now they say a 17-year-old boy.
It's legal in
That's the
Minnesota.
age of consent. So what the hell's the problem?
Well, because
but it
he
says
may
it can
have
be
paid him.
it says it can be a misdemeanor to engage in sex acts in a public place.
Yes, it's about public sex, and it's about that he found him on Craigslist and may have paid
You know,
him.
when we got rid of the sodomy laws in New York, some of them were based on heterosexual prostitution that was taking place in cars. And that was part of the case, of the Onofre case. We didn't get rid of the sodomy laws in New York until 1980. Oh, by the way, reading the reviews of the Joe Paterno book, you know, the new biography of him, he had to ask somebody what sodomy was.
Paterno, yes, exactly. Well, it's had various definitions over the years. It used to be understood simply as anal intercourse, and now it includes oral sex, too.
But Frank Mandelbaum knows what sodomy is, and he doesn't like it. This is a New York guy who died and left a trust for his grandchildren, but he said, my gay son Robert can't get any of this for his kids unless the child, he's married to the woman who gives him the child, and he's gay. He has a child with his partner. He's a judge himself, this Robert, who's the son. The father from the grave is asserting what
They
he
never
thinks
give up.
about sodomy.
Well, nonetheless, justice seems to have been done in Vermont, where a jury has convicted Mennonite pastor Kenneth Miller of helping unrelated Lisa Miller kidnap her daughter Isabella to Nicaragua to get her away from her ex-partner Janet Jenkins. Large Mennonite turnout in the courtroom, but the jury convicted this guy. He claimed, I didn't know that they were trying to kidnap the girl.
That is a lie, and it's a sin to tell a lie. I mean,
You'd
that's a
think.
lie. Yes. And
Nonetheless, the choir stood outside
course-
singing Amazing Grace.
And of course, Liberty University Law School and the Thomas Road Baptist Church, which is Jerry Falwell's old church, were very involved in this case and in
Yep.
hiding and helping.
Yep.
So Janet Jenkins, right?
Yes.
Is bringing a RICO suit, you know, racketeering against them for aiding and abetting in this kidnapping.
Yep.
More power to her.
Well, the sad thing is, of course, that Lisa and Isabella are still missing, believed to be in Nicaragua. It's been years since Janet has seen Isabella.
I mean,
and it's just a tragic case
horrible.
all around. Yeah. Which makes me admire the demonstrators in Biloxi, Mississippi. 60 of them went out to a roadside and held a demonstration in favor of same-sex marriage. There they are holding up signs. Biloxi is probably not the most friendly place to same-sex marriage. So we appreciate activists who decide that they're not going to let anything intimidate them.
And
Congratulations.
speaking of same-sex marriage, if you can get the next picture up, it's of Rufus Wainwright and his, well, by the time you see this, we hope, husband, because they were supposed to get married on Thursday, Jorn Weisbrot.
Wiesbrod.
Wiesbrod. Well, they
A German arts administrator.
were getting married at a nice splashy wedding with Yoko Ono and Carrie Fisher in attendance. Although Rufus was on CBS Sunday Morning talking about this, and he said, I think gay marriage is different. I'm not sure how it's different, but I think it's different. He hasn't figured it out yet.
I consider that a not very informed statement.
Well, he just thinks it's different. We don't know how.
He's not even married yet.
Let's have him on. Maybe he'll say, you know what, I got married. Well, what's he going to say? I feel like other married people.
He doesn't have to say anything.
All right.
But former and
We wish them well, by the way.
Former as Governor Bob Kerrey of Nebraska and trying to be senator. Former senator, wasn't he governor? At
He
one
was
point?
senator. I think he was governor. We'll get letters about
He's
this.
running for Senate again from Nebraska.
Yeah.
Not given a huge chance. Very tight race.
No.
He's been out there talking about same-sex marriage.
He brings it up.
Unbidden.
He brings it up. Frank
Yeah.
Bruni wrote about this in the Times, and he just look. Sometimes people just respect your candor. Sometimes,
We'll see.
anyway.
And in Washington State, another corporation, T-Mobile, has signed on as a supporter of marriage there. They have a referendum.
College students across the country are going to be rallying against Chick-fil-A and the presence on their campuses. This is going to be a big issue this fall. Some of the universities have already not renewed their contracts with Chick-fil-A as a result.
And the Chicago alderman who got in trouble for saying he didn't want Chick-fil-A in his district is defending that, but Alderman Moreno, but explaining that what he wants to do is make sure that they are hiring in a non-discriminatory way. So his statement about not wanting them there was a sort of assumption that they would be discriminating, and that's what he's interested in.
Speaking of Todd Aiken, our lead story, the Missouri voters approved a right to pray referendum, which protects students for their God-given right to refuse to be taught evolution. They can just assert this. I mean, this is nut stuff, and this is why Todd Aiken could win.
Next, a right to refuse to believe that 1 + 1 = 2.
We told you about the horrible Fort Worth raid on the Rainbow Lounge. Well, you know, this is a couple of years ago at this point, right? Mm-hmm. The leader of that fight was a guy named Thomas Annable, and this made him an activist. He founded...
He was the accountant at the bar when it was
Yep.
raided.
Became the president of Fairness Fort Worth, totally threw him into gay rights stuff, but he just killed himself with a gun, and we don't know why. But he really
59 years old.
launched something there.
And Chip Stevenson, 42 years old, who had run events for the Advocate magazine and then started his own entertainment production company, Big Daddy, died after a fall in his Chelsea apartment. And we mourn the death also of Phyllis Diller, 85 years old. My first
That's what she used
audiences,
to do all the time.
hers was a little more attractive.
No,
My
no,
first
no.
audience,
She never meant it to be attractive.
just my opinion.
Okay.
My first audiences were gay people because they have a great sense of humor. They love comedy and they love to laugh. How do you think they got the word gay put on them? But she started her stand-up career in clubs in the San Francisco area. She had grown up in Ohio and been a housewife there, and they moved to California, and then she started this comedy career. And I remember seeing her on Groucho Marx's You Bet Your Life when she was just being introduced as a housewife trying to get into comedy.
It was a great breakthrough for women.
Yeah.
I mean, the New York Times just did a feature on all these supposedly up-and-coming gay comics, but not that there haven't been a lot of them beforehand.
Plenty. And
Kate Clinton.
they quoted, well, they were talking about men specifically,
okay.
but they quote Mario Cantone
Bob
in
Smith.
there and Bob Smith, but there are others. And
Sure.
It was just this crazy
Jaffe
article.
Cohen, who has been on this show.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And why is Geraldo Rivera on Fox News claiming the Department of Homeland Security under Janet Napolitano is now this lesbian cabal?
Because he's a bad person. On the other hand, we are glad that the Federal Aviation Administration is no longer going to make transgender applicants for licenses go through burdensome psychological testing, which is great. You talked about this already.
Last week.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm just catching up to. I have to watch this show more. I go home, I'll watch it. Did we do what the Psychiatric Association did this
No.
week? Well, that's a
You
good.
can do that.
That's a positive story.
Okay.
They came out with a big advocacy of removing the barriers to care for gender transition treatment and for the protection of civil rights for transgender and gender
Very
variant
good.
individuals. Now, the problem, of course, has been, that they've often defined people of transgender experiences having a disease, gender dysphoria.
It's been controversial because on the one hand, you want some kind of diagnosis to get coverage for medical care that's needed. On the other hand, you don't want to be stigmatized as being diseased. So it's a tough call.
By the way, there's a big reward in that case out in North Texas, in Portland, Texas, where
Not so big.
Well, it's $25,000 now total.
Oh, okay.
Total. The story was about a couple of $1,000s being added to it.
I was looking at a headline.
But there, I meant to bring this in. There's a sketch of the shooter. I'll send it out with the email. If you write to me and you get on our email list, I'll send you the
Well, it must be published.
sketch of the shooter.
I think the TV stations there are publishing the
Right,
picture.
for the locals.
I think we may even have shown it before. Campus Pride, which is an LGBT organization that works with colleges and universities, has published a couple of lists. You may have seen news about the Princeton Review coming out with its annual list of best colleges. Well, Campus Pride has published a couple of lists, the most trans-friendly colleges and universities in the U.S., the top 10, and the top 25 LGBT in general friendly colleges and universities. And if you go to campuspride.org, you can get the list. But the trans list in alphabetical order is Ithaca College, NYU, Princeton, UCLA, UC Riverside, UMass Amherst, University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, University of Oregon, University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Vermont.
Right. Good news for Catholic priests, you don't work for the Pope.
Yeah, that was a shocker.
There was a decision in an abuse case in Oregon, which said in the United States District Court, this has been going on for 6 years, and it could shield the Vatican from possible monetary damages in these cases because they're saying you're not an employee of the Vatican. Well, take advantage of your freedom and start speaking out for what's right now.
I think sometimes they are treated as employees of the Vatican.
And we buried the headline. Ann and I can now watch the Masters golf tournament with a little less guilt because they have two women members. Actually, they're not going to have them. They don't induct them until the spring when the course opens again. One of them, of course, is a war criminal, Condoleezza Rice.
It's going to be very painful watching her parade around in her green jacket. But the whole thing about membership at Augusta is about the 1%, the top 1% of the 1%, actually.
Right.
But actually, the fact that some of those guys would remain members when there weren't any female members is really unbelievable. Right. But now we have Condi.
Yes, we do.
And the other woman who seems quite accomplished.
Ooh, she's a little scary.
Yeah. All right, international news. Well, the United Church of Canada has elected an out gay moderator. Who
we got a picture
will
of him.
Serve a term of 3 years, Reverend Gary Patterson from Vancouver. He is married to another minister who he's been with for 30 years. He also has 3 daughters from an ex-wife before that time, I guess.
It's the first mainstream church in Canada to allow the ordination of gay ministers back in 1988, which was bitterly opposed by their conservative members, but they've left. And anyway, he's been a minister for 35 years. And, he's heartened that his sexuality has been a non-issue in this whole election.
The Netherlands has also announced that it will make sex changes easier for official purposes. It will no longer require surgery to get official government documents of a sex change. Thank you to the Netherlands. But Moscow is the site of some disturbing news, and that is this whole Pussy Riot.
Well, this is all about free
story.
expression, and we've shown you repeatedly what they do to demonstrators who are gay, who just try to show up and stand there in the street with signs and things like that.
Well, the Moscow court has just upheld the 100-year ban on gay pride marches there.
So this is Putin digging in, and these the Pussy Riot, the women from Pussy Riot, were protesting him. They weren't even protesting the Orthodox Church. They did it in an Orthodox church.
I think because the church was supporting him. Right?
Yeah, oh, they are. They're allied with him.
Yeah.
But anyway, our former mayor, Ed Koch, is praising the conviction of these women because they're full of religious hatred, which is not what they're full of.
He has a history. This is all about ACT UP going into St. Patrick's Cathedral in 1989, including me getting arrested there, an action which Mr. Hum does not entirely approve of.
Yeah,
We've had this discussion now for 23 years.
I don't approve. I protested at St. Patrick's Cathedral probably over 100 times. I just don't think people should disrupt worship services because that's freedom of religion. And you and I disagree about this.
I don't think disrupting a service is against freedom of religion.
I'm not against.
I think it's
wait a minute. I'm not against Catholics standing up during a service and saying, "Stop your nonsense," because they're part of the service, they're part of the group, and that kind of stuff.
If this weren't a tourist attraction, this mass, with the gift shop open in the back during the service and a platform built for TV cameras to record the sermon, I might agree with you.
99% of the gay community agreed with you. Right?
Phew. But not Ed Koch, who was there to defend the cathedral that day along with the police commissioner and some bomb-sniffing dogs.
And like we had no gripe against Cardinal O'Connor, who was a monster.
Yeah. So anyway, Pussy Riot.
And I was an endorser of the demonstration, by the way.
Outside.
Outside, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know people were going inside.
And I did. We did not get sentenced to 2 years in prison. We got sentenced to 10 days of community service.
And the 2-year sentence for Pussy Riot is a complete outrage.
Yes, and they've already served 5 or 6 months in prison. They've been sitting there.
It's an outrage.
I was happy to see Gary Kasparov outside being beaten and arrested in support of Pussy Riot.
It does not make me want to visit Russia.
Hundreds of people protested outside the court.
Yeah. And were busted up by the police.
Yep, exactly, including Kasparov.
And
in Zimbabwe, a couple dozen cops, as we entered our studio, were on their way into the offices of gays and lesbians of Zimbabwe to bust up the office, search the files,
beat
go after
people.
them.
They beat people, they detained people, they harassed them and when they were in jail. Then they went to their homes and things like that.
This is a second invasion of these offices.
It's arbitrary arrest. It's outrageous.
And August 21st, as we tape, mark this day, in Cameroon, it is Gay Hate Day, meaning hate gay people. They're holding a parade.
It seems to be Gay Hate Day every day in Lebanon. Police in Beirut arrested 2 men last Friday on suspicion that they were gay.
They having rectal exams,
well,
too?
it says they were caught undertaking what were called in media reports immoral activity in a car. Could mean kissing, for all you know. This is less than
looking at each other.
This is less than a month after 36 Lebanese gay men suspected of being gay were rounded up at a theater.
Nonetheless, in Denmark, they held their annual Mr. Gay contest and chose an out gay Muslim as Mr. Gay, and the second place went to an out gay Christian contestant.
And how many people do you think in Britain in a poll identified as asexual?
I have no idea.
1%. But these are people who say they might want a romantic relationship,
Yes.
not a sexual relationship. And they're looking for other people.
I bet a lot more than that are not having sexual relationships.
Similarly inclined.
But Boris Johnson, the mayor of London, has come out for same-sex marriage.
Yes, he did. He's from the Conservative Party, and he's touted as a future prime minister. And he is.
Isn't he a crazy person?
Well, he's very frank. I mean, I don't like conservatives. I probably wouldn't vote for him. But I find him rather engaging because he just bluntly will tell you what's. And not like Ed Koch.
When he got stuck
not
on
like
the
Ed
zip
Koch,
line?
who was not like Ed Koch, who's like a phony conservative.
Yeah.
But I saw Boris Johnson on Letterman, and he was funny as hell. But I would have voted for Ken Livingstone, who's a commie. And a Welsh football player, Daniel Thomas, was suspended from his football club because he tweeted about Tom Daley, the diver. If there was any consolation for finishing fourth, at least Daley and Waterfield can go and bum each other. And then he uses the hashtag Team HIV. So wait a minute, he's been suspended. He says, oh, somebody grabbed my phone and did this. Oh, I guess that's what happened.
It's the Anthony Weiner excuse.
I guess that's what happened.
Yeah, my account has been hacked.
Yes. All right.
Well, that's a segue into AIDS news.
Yeah.
A federal task force may recommend shortly that HIV testing be done routinely and universally by
Yeah.
doctors as part of a regular checkup.
We
Now,
resisted this for many years.
but it was recommended by the CDC a few years ago, but this task force is connected to the Obama healthcare law that was passed a couple of years ago and is slowly coming into effect in various ways. And the deal with this task force is that when they say something, then insurance companies have to cover that procedure. So this doesn't mandate that the testing be done, but it says if it is done, insurance companies have to pay for it. And they are certainly recommending that it be done more routinely than it is being done now. Now, you might want to take risk factors into consideration before doing the testing, but it should certainly be a broader understanding of what constitutes risk for HIV, which is sexual activity that involves the transfer of bodily fluids
Right.
or needle sharing or
Well, just don't get
Breast
tested.
milk.
Just don't get tested in Egypt. I heard if you're there on a visa now, my friend Douglas, who was over there, is thinking of applying to the American University in Cairo. They require an HIV test, and if you test positive, you have to leave the country.
That's true of many countries, and it's been true of Russia, and frankly, it was true of here.
It was.
Yeah. It's only recently that it's been scaled
I
back.
I put this in the wrong category, but I don't want to miss it because it certainly affects us. The Planning Commission in San Francisco has approved the first LGBT senior housing plan in San Francisco. 110 apartments for low-income seniors. Let's
Yippee.
move. They're going to break ground in 2013.
I
Hope to have it ready in 2014. Be getting towards that senior age then.
Well, we need that here. You're not planning to move to San
I
Francisco,
don't
are you?
know. No, I'm not.
All right. Entertainment news. Well, first, a couple of upcoming reality show notes. On the next edition of The Amazing Race, one of the teams will be the fabulous Beekman Boys, Josh Kilmer Purcell and Brent Ridge. Josh, you know, is a writer, and the two of them have had a show about their house upstate for a couple of years, and they're now going to be on The Amazing Race, the first episode of which airs on CBS September 30th.
If you can get over to Primary Stages over there at 59 East 59th Street, there is an awful lot of gay one-acts over there, but I recommend Series B. Are you concentrating over Series A, although Nancy Giles is in Series A, the commentator on CBS Sunday Morning, and she's very good. She does a very funny thing.
Got a good review in the Times.
She did, but not the rest of that. And then Series B, I mean, Paul Rudnick has this play about a gay steward on a plane who has...
Flight attendant.
I'm sorry, flight attendant, excuse me, whatever, who was thwarted a terrorist attempt, and it is absolutely hilarious. The character is very politically incorrect, but yet funny, and I'm very critical of those things, but I think Paul handles it very well, and it's pretty... And then Neil LaBute does this very gay play about an older guy who has a lover who he's breaking up with, and I won't tell you any more than that, but it's coming from Neil LaBute. It was
You are not a Neil LaBute fan.
I am not, but it was pretty audacious and pretty funny.
Good. And
Summer shorts at 59 East 59.
And continuing the yin and yang, on the next series of Survivor, there will be an Arkansas lesbian country girl.
Oh.
She's got a short blonde haircut. She's kind of cute, and she will be one of the contestants on Survivor.
Anderson Cooper has broken up with his longtime boyfriend, Ben Mazzani. Is that how you say his name?
Okay.
Well, because there were all these pictures circulating of Mazzani getting a lip lock going on with somebody else in the park or something like that. And this apparently caught him completely off guard.
Well, this is what the tabloids say. We don't really know the real story.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons that we had read that Anderson...
had read.
That Anderson had come out was because some other ex-boyfriend was going to write a book about him or something, and et cetera. I know some people think we're hard on Anderson, but look...
I just have some
we're just reporting on him as a
skepticism.
celebrity, like we're going to report that poor Rosie O'Donnell had a heart attack
Yes.
and survived, and we're glad for that.
Yes. The Museum of the Moving Image in Astoria, Queens is going to have a retrospective of independent gay filmmaker Ira Sachs. He is the curator of the monthly series Queer Art Film at the IFC Center on 6th Avenue. And he's made a lot of films, including The Delta, 40 Shades of Blue, Married Life. So he has a new film that's going to premiere at Sundance in January, and he is going to host this retrospective at the Museum of the Moving Image in Astoria, Queens. So if you're an Ira Sachs fan, that's where to find him and his movies.
We should also give you the gay angle on the passing of Tony Scott, the director who killed himself last week, is more famous for Top Gun, which is pretty gay in itself.
Well, someone said it was a story of a man fighting his homosexuality.
Of course, he ends up with a lesbian actress, of course, Kelly, what's her name? Tom
McGillis.
McGillis, yes, who eventually came out. We're not telling tales out of school here. But one of his first big film was The Hunger, with Susan Sarandon and Catherine Deneuve in a hot love scene.
Well, and we also mourn the death of Dale Olson at 78, who was one of the legendary Hollywood publicists, had worked with Clint Eastwood, Steven Spielberg, Shirley MacLaine, Gene Kelly, Joan Crawford. But one of the things he's best known for was convincing Rock Hudson to be public about having AIDS. Which, in spite of the fact that everyone saw him completely devastated and heading off to Paris for treatment, he didn't want to talk about it, and he thought he could conceal. But
as he had all his life.
Yes.
He was never proud of himself, Mr. Fitzgerald.
So Dale Olson, according to the New York Times obituary, persuaded him to help demystify the disease by announcing that he had contracted
Well,
it.
it did help. It helped an awful lot at that time, I remember. I mean,
It was huge.
Certainly the Magic Johnson thing on a much larger scale did that.
But that was later.
Much later.
You have a terminal disease. This is going to affect a lot of people. You can be the person who can make people aware of it.
It made the Reagans talk about it.
It was an astonishing moment. I remember it vividly. So
they knew
Dale
rock.
Olson, legendary Hollywood publicist.
Now, you remember Michelle Clooney playing one of the lesbians on Queer as Folk? Well, she's a playwright now, and her new play called
And an activist, too.
Us, or perhaps it's U.S., I'm not entirely sure. It says U.S. It's a love story set against the backdrop of the 2008 presidential election. Power struggles about politics in the bedroom. Although I think it's a heterosexual story because she's in it with a guy
Well,
named Jeff LeBeau.
there is nothing to compare with the presidential election going on right now. So the theater and drama of that is new every day.
News is supposed to slow down in the summer.
It's August.
And it's supposed to be the silly season, and a lot of life and death issues are being discussed, folks. But I really hope, as you were saying, I hope everybody who is running for Congress now gets asked where they stand on abortion and all these other issues.
And this,
people start paying attention and do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no being casual about this election. It's far too important and far too scary.
And it's not just the presidential election. Pay attention to your state legislative elections. Get out there and vote, because they're trying to stop you.
And we'll see you next week with more news of this. Thank you for watching.
Bye.